We better get used to the fact that it's cyclic, it's inevitable, it's in our nature, and we just have to adjust to it.
If you think you're going to be invaded, which we constantly were thinking on and off, anyhow, for some years, you never really thought what it was going to be like. Not really. You never do you? I mean, nature's merciful in that way.
I'm a pacifist, and I know if I'd been a man, nobody would make me serve.
Getting me in the army again would be a very, very difficult job. I think I'd burn my draft card this time.
I wish we could avoid them.
Many, many people have forgotten really what happened. And, regardless of whatever errors were made, that if it had gone entirely the other way and we'd been left with what the Nazis were advocating, it would have been dreadful.
Any war is so senseless, so stupid, so out of the mind that people can't even start the war.
There's a man here who actually was in the first tank over Nijmegen Bridge, who I've been talking to, British soldier. And he was in the graveyard recently, and he noticed that all the boys were between the ages of 17 and 20. And he said that would be the cream of England now.
I think war is totally inevitable, unfortunately. I mean, I'm too old to be wise about it. War is going to happen. It always will. And unfortunately, I think youth seems to need it. It releases some violence or some inherent thing in the human spirit which has to be contained by war, by violence. I don't think it'll ever change, and I don't think any world will ever see total peace. I think peace would be totally unhealthy.
Montgomery conceived a grand plan that would put a speedy end to the Second World War. D-Day was 3 months old, and the British at home were low on rations and hungry for victory. So Eisenhower agreed to speed up the Allied advance into the Ruhr, the industrial heart of Germany, in an operation codenamed Market Garden. To get there, General Horrocks' tank corps needed to punch through 64 miles of Nazi-occupied Holland, crossing 11 rivers and canals. The plan was to drop 36,000 men into Holland to secure these obstacles. The American 101st Airborne Division would take the bridges in southern Holland. The crack 82nd Airborne under General Jim Gavin were assigned the crossings at Grave and Nijmegen. And the British 1st Airborne would secure the furthest objective, the biggest prize of all, the bridge at Arnhem. If all went according to plan, the tanks would relieve them in 2 days. But it didn't go according to plan. Arnhem turned into a nightmare, something that had been hinted at in the final staff conference. The overall British commander, Boy Browning, is on record as telling Montgomery, "But sir, I think we may be going a bridge too far." The operation took only 7 days to plan and 9 days to fail, from Sunday, September the 17th, until Tuesday, September the 26th, 1944. 32 years later, in the summer of 1976, the English director, Sir Richard Attenborough, came to Holland to film the story of the battle. This time, the master plan had been drawn up and financed by one man, perhaps the last of the truly independent movie moguls, Joseph E. Levine.
There was another mountain to be climbed somewhere, and I thought I would just do it. I had just turned 69, and somehow or other, when you get close to 70, you start to think a little differently. Well, I just wanted to make it, and I did. I knew it would be a terrific challenge. I knew that it would cost a great deal of money. As I say, if I were a businessman, and if I were an accountant, or if I had a board of directors, this picture never would have been made.
But it was made. It may have taken Montgomery and Browning only 7 days to plan their operation. but it took Levine and Attenborough a full 18 months. The film was based on the firm foundation of Cornelius Ryan's A Bridge Too Far, a worldwide bestseller in 27 languages.
Sent the fellows that made a mess of this goddamn bridge, I must tell you. Huh?
Yeah, they understand they say they're Dutch.
Oh.
Never Dutch. Single Dutch.
Ah, single Dutch. Now we are German.
Yes.
What more?
You better not let any of the Dutch see you, boy.
First, they had to find a location. The bridge at Arnhem is now surrounded with modern apartment blocks, so it was impossible to shoot on the original battlefield. 40 kilometers to the north, Deventer, population 65,000, fitted the bill, and the city elders were happy to permit their town to be commandeered for the summer. The logistics of putting a war film together are almost as complex as mounting a military operation itself. Assorted hardware belonging to both sides was tracked down and shipped back to Europe. One tank was even removed from a concrete plinth. And however vast the scale of the epic, the details have to be exact. There's always some expert in the audience who'll notice that a decoration is incorrect or a piece of furniture belongs to the wrong period. It's always safer to use the real thing, as far as possible. Since there are no longer any gliders of the kind they used at Arnhem, these had to be redesigned and built, some to scale and some to fly. The planes, however, are still around, Dakota C-47s, and these were tracked down in Denmark, Finland, Portugal, Israel, even Entebbe, enough to start a small airline, or even a medium-sized one. The British soldiers were played by British actors, and the local Dutch were played by the local Dutch. Children were dressed to look like their parents in 1944, and for the boys at least, this involved some necessary sacrifices.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
And finally, 14 famous film stars. Hardy Kruger and Maximilian Schell to play the Germans, Leif Ullmann to play a Dutch heroine, and the rest, men who made their names in various roles, whether dying in Venice, attempting to assassinate de Gaulle, being a Cockney Casanova, or a very unpleasant dentist. Anthony Hopkins masterminded one of the many Entebbe raids. Elliot Gould had satirical experience of war in MASH, and other assorted American actors fell fatally in love at Harvard, chased drug pushers round the streets of New York, or cut up the opposition on a rollerball rink. All these, plus the legendary 007 and the Sundance Kid for good box office measure. $10 million worth of stars and one man to sign the checks.
But it is the most expensive movie ever planned. Other movies have cost more, but didn't start out to cost more. I refer, of course, to that great thing that was made in Rome with Elizabeth Taylor and I forget the name of it. I wouldn't have forgotten it if it was my money that made it. I think it cost somewhere $28 or $29 million.
Films are mostly make-believe, but a parachute jump is for real. Lives could be lost unless plans are carefully laid.
You don't want to lose your best formation for the Polish.
No, I think
whatever you feel is the best form.
That's not a good idea. I think the Vic of Vicks gives us a marvellous spread.
We have problems for the ordinary flying or for the Poles?
For the British.
For the British.
Number 3, a Danish.
Experienced pilots have been corralled from all over Europe and America. Some from airlines, some from air forces, others out of retirement.
One of those difficult problems would be, in fact, the recovery of the parachutes at the end of the day. If the last drop was at 1900, you wouldn't be off the DZ until about 9 o'clock at night.
No, the trouble is
But the troops are still serving. Men of the British 16th Parachute Brigade. Young men, all volunteers. Some of them sons of the men who jumped at Arnhem. At dawn, more than 1,000 Dutch extras have assembled on Henckelsey Heide, the actual wartime landing site, to boost the numbers. It's doubtful if there are 36,000 paratroops in Western Europe today, let alone England.
Parachutists will be dropping in and around you. A, be careful they don't land on you because they will hurt you and certainly hurt themselves.
More than 20 cameras will cover the drop. Cameras on gliders, cameras in planes, cameras on helicopters, cameras at the top of cherry pickers, cameras on cranes. Cameras that might themselves be in shot from the air, so they need to be camouflaged. Everything is under control except the weather. Not only the light, but the wind. In wartime, a jump may be attempted in a 25-knot wind. In peacetime, the limit's 15 knots. So there's nothing to do but sit and wait.
Oh, Lord, the light's really going, isn't it? Dear me.
4 hours later, the gusts drop and they're off.
Here we go. Right, lads, whoever the green light constitutes order to jump, failing to do so, we're resorting to court-martial.
We were getting a little sick and tired of the bull. We'd got a new RSM. I remember that. And he, you know, came from the Guards. We were beginning to call ourselves the stillborn, not the airborne. The stillborn. And we really were, at that time, you know, even though none of us, I think, that had seen war ever wanted to see it again, but we wanted to get in and get the job finished and finish off Hitler and his regime.
Go down, Frank.
The American 82nd Airborne were commanded by Jim Gavin.
The one thing I've had to remind young troopers, and I've done this in the past, before normally we had thousands of them with us, and I had to tell them, now you must remember, this isn't a football game. There's men who want to kill you the minute you get out of that plane, and you have no friends around, nobody your right or left except your rifle. That's your best friend, and you must live, depending upon how you use that, until you can get together with all the rest of it.
Anyone near a parachute, when the time comes, hold it up and try and get some breeze into it. You'll be given an instruction for that. Also, you'll be given an instruction when to move, and you don't do it until I say.
War correspondent Ed Merrow flew with the troops.
In just about 30 seconds now, our ship will drop, and these 19 men will walk out onto Dutch soil. You can probably hear the snap as they check the lashing on the static line. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Every man out. I can see their chutes going down now. Every man clear, hanging there very gracefully. Seem to be completely relaxed, as I said a moment ago, like nothing so much as khaki dolls hanging beneath a green lampshade. You see one man go down just north of the little road. The whole sky is filled with parachutes. They're all going down so slowly, it seems as though they should get to the ground much faster.
John Waddy was a major then with the 1st Paras.
Anyway, as soon as we got over the dropping zone, we were out like a flash, We were dropped by the American pilots, dead on the button. And then as soon as my chute opened, it was obvious that there were a lot of enemy around, because we could hear machine gun fire, and we could hear the sort of crack, crack, crack of the bullets going over and above us.
From the filmmaker's point of view, the jump's a success. The men hit the markers spot on, and the ground action moved fast, as if there were real bullets flying around. But an 800-foot drop from an unfamiliar plane into gusting wind is more dangerous than usual. Several ankles are twisted and sprained. One man is taken to hospital with a broken back. Another faces a court-martial. His nerve failed him, and he refused to jump. But they quite enjoyed their brief moment of stardom.
What's the matter with your eye? It's quite a jump. You land on your face, or? That's a beauty. Come here a sec. Come here a sec. You know, I'd like you to meet somebody who's really doing it.
How did you collect it?
This guy's really doing it.
I got into a bit of an argument.
Oh, it wasn't in the drop?
Well, part of it was, and then after that I got...
in a bar?
Yeah, in a bar.
So really the most dangerous part of the war is in the bars,
It's
right?
afterwards, yeah, the fighting afterwards.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's the only time in the film they use real soldiers, and their role is now over. But a surprising number of the actors were real soldiers. Once.
It took me 32 years to cross the bridge. I did it last Saturday in a rather large motor car. And it felt very odd, having sat on the other side at Driel and Elst, waiting to get across. I can't remember it terribly well. I was 24, I'm 56 now. Lots of things have happened, and it's sort of passed into limbo. It wasn't pleasant, any of it. And particularly the evacuation at Oosterbeek was, I suppose, the nastiest part of my war, beyond Belsen. But somehow, it seems even odder that I'm back here in familiar territory, familiar land, amongst people I knew very well from September of '44 until the following March, before we crossed the Rhine. It seems a bit rum to be making a movie about something I actually did. It's an odd feeling. I don't know if I like it.
I was a high school boy during the war, and then for the last half year of the war, old men and kids were drafted, and I had to join the army at the age of 16.
And where did you go?
Oh, I had to get involved in the battle after the bridge of Remagen had been crossed, and the armies were divided into the northern part and the southern part. So I was participating in the battle in the south.
I was never really a very good soldier. I couldn't take the discipline. I didn't like taking care of my clothes that well. I didn't like the short hair, even then. Matter of fact, when I got discharged from the Marine Corps, the day before I was discharged, they made me get my hair cut, which was a terrible blow to me.
And, I was a year in Germany and a year in Korea. I was 2 years national service. But I was just an ordinary soldier who tried to get out of everything.
I began life in the Coldstream Guards. The intention was that I should be an officer in the Coldstream Guards, but I got to a certain point in officer training, and I wasn't suitable for them. So I went into the Loyal North Lancashire Regiment, which I think now is amalgamated with the East Lancs, and had a very good time.
I only just made private, as a matter of fact. They couldn't bust me any lower. No, I was what's called cannon fodder. I was a private in the infantry. I was actually, in fact, a fusilier in the Royal Fusiliers.
Well, I was in the Navy. I went 16 when I went in for 12 years, and then I was out after 3 with ulcers. So obviously I was temperamentally unsuited for it.
When President John Kennedy was alive, he had passed a law that no young man with a child had to serve. Tatum was born on November 5th, 1963, and he was assassinated on November 22nd. And the new presidents revoked the law the day after he took over. So I just got in under the wire, so to speak.
The stars are playing colonels and brigadiers and generals. But the ordinary troops who waged that battle in Holland in the summer of 1944 were young men. Some in their early 20s, many destined never to become 20. And in March of 1976, auditions were held in London to find a platoon of young actors who would, for a basic wage and very basic living, spend the summer in a barracks of sorts in Holland, train and be taught to fight like real soldiers.
Lined up behind the two brains on that wall. The first move is the two brains to each corner, bang, bang.
Some of them had experience of military service, and they were detailed to teach the others.
Brains!
At the beginning of the week, there were 40 actors, and I think everyone regarded them as 40 temperamental actors. Gradually, the 40 began to blend into one unit, and by the end of the week, the incredible change that took place was that suddenly we, on the Friday, I think it was a Friday, wasn't it, we went to the shooting range, and it wasn't 40 actors paraded in front of Sir Richard Attenborough, it was 40 paratroops. Even General Frost, he said, well, they do look a bit raw, but he said, they are paratroops.
The original Operation Market Garden was masterminded in the clubhouse at Moor Park Golf Course in the south of England.
Now, a drop zone 8 miles from Arnhem Bridge. It might be thought by some to present problems.
Sean Connery plays General Urquhart, who commanded the British paratroopers at Arnhem. It was his first combat drop, and he suffered from air sickness.
They will race ahead to the bridge and hold it, while the other battalions arrive on foot.
And they'll be quick enough to secure both ends of Arnhem.
Dirk Bogarde portrays General Browning, the overall commander.
Action, then. We need 3 days of clear skies.
Ryan O'Neill is General Jumping Jim Gavin, who commanded the American 82nd Airborne. And Gene Hackman plays Sałabowski, the Polish commander. 4 star names playing 4-star generals. But are they really necessary? If the story is strong enough, wouldn't cheaper, lesser-known actors be just as good? Director Richard Attenborough disagrees.
Well, you're dealing with superstars, really. The persona of the various people involved is such that they are superstars. I mean, what was, to go above our level, but what was Montgomery, what was Eisenhower other than a superstar? The people that we have, General Browning, General Gavin, General Urquhart, General Maxwell Taylor. If you're making a subject of the complexity of this one, running together 6, 8, 10 parallel stories, you haven't got the time to allow a personality, and that is an actor, to impress himself upon an audience. The second they appear, they have got to create a huge impression. Their characterization, their personality, their activity has got to be immediately understood by the audience. Therefore, you need huge personalities and supreme actors. And we have really not filled this film with just film names.
I'm going to be just completely nonchalant. I love to watch Dirk Bogarde. He's an acting lesson for me. In each take, he found something new, something more.
We've all been through the mill, all of us. Not one of us hasn't really, you know, started at the bottom and gone up to the top. It's very exciting because you know that you're actually working with thoroughbreds. And any race is the more exciting if you've got the best horses.
Actors are always competitive, but I think that's good. If somebody is really good in a scene, and then you want to be good, and you want to come up with it too. You want to have your moment, you know.
So long as people are professional, it's got nothing to do with their, quote, star status. Incompetence is the only thing I abhor, and I certainly wouldn't want to have to be put in the position to have to put up with, whether it's a repertory actor or a star.
General Urquhart himself, whom Connery portrays, seems happy enough with the casting.
Well, I'm not a great cinema goer, so I'm afraid these names don't mean quite the same things to me as it does to other people. But when my wife and daughters were told that he was to play my part, they were thrilled. And in fact, I'd never seen him on the cinema at all. But they went to see a film of his just the other day, something to do with King and I or something, I can't remember what it's called now. And they came back and said, their first remark was, well, he'll do. So they were pleased.
What do you feel now that you've met him?
I think it's a remarkable resemblance in some ways, especially from the back.
And not just supply the community. education.
More important than any artistic imperative, the need for stars in films is as old as cinema itself. With 14 famous names above the title, journalists descended on the film set from all over the world.
I was just proud to catch Mac, put it that way.
This business has done a circle many times. We've now come and done it completely around, and now the public wants stars.
Oh, should I have my hat?
Yeah, we want some with the hat and some without.
Hat! Years ago, my concept was that you didn't need to have a big star, to have a big movie. The people were interested in good movies. And the most important thing in the world, and still is, was the writer and the director.
Could I have a mirror, please?
Should we do it in character?
A great part of the glamour of our business, I wouldn't say it's gone, but it needs to be revived. Because the public is there waiting to take us, the business, to their arms. Redford now is the #1 man because of President's Men and because of all the other pictures he's got.
I think he's run out of film. No, I haven't. Thank you very much, James. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Is that a wrap?
Because you actually stood in a very soft section.
A very dark section.
Did you ever meet Tatum?
No, I didn't.
You didn't, Edward Fox?
Yeah.
And my distributor in Japan said, if you can get me Redford as part of your cast, instead of giving X amount of dollars, I will give you 2X amount of dollars.
Meanwhile, back at the war, the British 30 Corps, 600 tanks and 20,000 vehicles, had successfully set out on its 64-mile fight to get to the bridge at Arnhem. 200,000 men under the command of General Sir Brian Horrocks.
It was a beautiful, sunny, Sunday day. It was rather a terrible thought, you know, that one word from me and all hell was likely to break out. I hated those moments before a battle, hated them, because I knew, and the troops knew, that you can't fight through the German paratroops who've been appearing in more and more strength the whole time without a good many casualties.
The retreating Germans blew up the bridge at Somme, a setback that had been anticipated. The British and Americans worked round the clock to lay a Bailey Bridge. It was the first of a succession of fatal delays. Operation Market Garden was already 36 hours adrift. The British drop at Arnhem was heading for disaster. They anticipated weak German resistance. Browning told them to expect Hitler Youth and old men on bicycles. Instead, they faced the fearsome armor of the 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions. A handful of lightly armed Red Berets fought their way to the bridge, hoping against hope that Horrocks' armada would arrive in the 2 days, according to Montgomery's plan. But by the 4th day of the operation, the British tanks were halted once more. The American 82nd Airborne had reached the south side of the bridge at Nijmegen, only 11 miles from Arnhem, but they too had been stalled by SS Panzers. They were commanded by the youngest general in the American Army, 37-year-old Jim Gavin.
Now, we had worried about Urquhart and the British up at Arnhem, and we couldn't get any news about them. We had assured them we'd be up in 3 days, and they had assured me they'd link up with me, the Guards Armored, in a few days, and that worked out. So I felt great anxiety about Urquhart, and I knew I had to get to him. And I had had a lot of experience in fighting over bridges. And when you back the Germans up onto a bridge, that wasn't anything, because you could pile up the dead there forever, and when they wanted to withdraw, they'd withdraw and blow the bridge, and you didn't get the bridge anyway. There's only one way to get a bridge in war, and that's to get both sides of it. So I said to General Browning and General Horrocks, I simply have to cross the river and get to the other end, or I'll never get it. I asked General Horrocks if he didn't have some boats. In the American Army, in a corps acting independently as his was, you always have one engineer regiment, and in that regiment you have one boat company. So I said, you must have boats somewhere down the column. And the staff began to buzz to hear them talking about it. And I said, yes, there's some boats down there. And I said, how many? They said, about 28. And I said, what are they like? They said, they're folding canvas. I never heard of such a thing. We have plywood boats, solid boats, you see. And I said, they are boats? And they said, yep. And I said, you think we can use them in the river? And they said, yep. And I said, we're gone.
32 years later, almost to the day, on a September Sunday morning, the busy Rhine-bound river traffic is stopped for an hour to enable a fleet of small boats once again to cross the river by Nijmegen Bridge. They don't have to fight the Germans, but they still have to fight the currents.
General Gavin said, you're all volunteers. If you want to change your mind, all you need to do is take one step back. There wasn't a face or muscle moved. And he said, there's only half of you coming back. And then there was a silence for a while. But he said, very few people in the world ever have an opportunity like this.
In the war, this heroic crossing was led by Major Julian Cook. He's played by Robert Redford.
Some people say he was a shit. Some people say he was a good guy, full of courage. It's very hard to draw a clear determination from that. Well, I'm interested in what people's behavior under duress anyway, and I think that a lot of that courage was absolute panic and fear. I think that a lot of what happened is crossing of the boats. When you're being shot at and there are explosions all over the place and you know the odds are just incredible in terms of your making it, and it has very little to do with your own skill, very little to do with your own abilities. It has more to do with your own luck. They keep talking about it being the most courageous, heroic event of the war. I think there was no choice. Some people made it, very few, and those people were called heroes.
Well, it wasn't a suicide mission. I wouldn't have sent them on a suicide mission. They got on the far side, cleaned out the Germans there, went up to the railroad bridge, went onto the big bridge over the river, the big highway bridge, and waved to the British tanks across, and we got it intact. That wasn't blown. Everybody got into the action, and we thought it was our greatest victory, and the men who crossed the river perhaps showed the greatest heroism of any men we had had with us, probably in the war.
And I feel terribly sorry for those airborne troops. Looking across, it was apparently murder to go in these flimsy assault boats they'd never seen, mind you. And when I and Jim Gavin, could you tell me afterwards, reckoned it was the most gallant action that was ever carried out.
For the Dutch in the south, the war seemed over. They were jubilant. But only 10 miles to the north, all hell had broken out, giving rise to courage of a different kind, exemplified by this woman, Kate ter Horst. Her home in the suburbs of Arnhem was suddenly the centre of a bloody battle, with the Germans decimating the English paratroopers. She had 5 young children of her own to look after, but she opened her home to the British and helped to care for more than 300 wounded. 64 men died at her house in the 9 days of Arnhem, and they were buried in the garden, where she and her husband Jan erected a memorial for them. Those that survive remember her, men like Taffy Brace.
It was just something that you just can't explain. There are things that we can't explain. I would say Kate ter Horst's quality was unique. Unique, that's the only word that I can think to describe her. She was a unique person.
Taffy Brace was a medical orderly. At Arnhem, he saved the life of his friend Andrew Milbourne.
I seem to remember this lady, blonde, fair, and to me, in my stupor at that particular time through loss of blood, sometimes has been an angel, and something I'll never forget, never ever forget. The reading of the 23rd Psalm. Whenever I hear it to this day, or hear it being said or sung, Crimond, I can't, it's very, very difficult to keep the tears back. And I think of, you know, lads and that sort of thing, and the courage of these Dutch people, God, what they went through, you know, to try and save us.
You can't do anything. You have no material, you have no dressing, no food, no blankets, no water, no, nothing. I'm dead.
Mrs. ter Horst's home, a former vicarage, was carpeted with bodies, all severely wounded, many dying. She shared her children's food with them. But more important still, she gave them hope.
English is difficult, you see. This wounded soul can be as dangerous for life as the wounded body. And I think you have to try to get a kind of rhythm, a breath going again.
After the British retreat from Arnhem, she and all her neighbours were forced out by the Germans to face near starvation in the terrible winter that followed Operation Market Garden. But when the war was over, she returned to her home beside the battle-scarred church. And now, for the film, the church and her house have been rebuilt, soon to be scarred once more by bullets and shell fire. Outside the door, the film actors are rehearsing the scene where the troops first asked to use her house. Kate ter Horst is played by Lief Ullmann.
Is your husband not yet returned? It's good. Plumed about town stuff.
Laurence Olivier plays the Dutch doctor who intercedes on behalf of the British wounded. In a film crammed to the last reel with stars, some extra magic surrounds Lord Olivier. He was a film star before the war in Rebecca and Wuthering Heights, but he forsook Hollywood for the English stage and devoted most of his recent years to the birth of the new National Theatre in London. But today, in his 70th year, he is once again one of the most sought-after film actors in the world, with recent successes like Marathon Man to his credit. As a director, his Henry V and Richard III have never been bettered in the many films of Shakespeare's plays. As an actor, he remains disarmingly modest.
You know, in this case, you're particularly much in the hands of your director, which
you see what I have.
In this particular case is a very, very nice and a very good thing.
But ask them
to
if
be.
that ticket,
And
I think it would.
because he carries the whole story in his mind, he knows exactly what's required of your bit of it, your piece of it, your part of it.
It doesn't include.
And he's able to advise you pretty well exactly how to do it.
I'll pay that myself.
And it is anyhow, the medium belongs to the
But
director.
I think sometimes the air.
And more in this medium, I think the actor serves the director rather than in the theatre medium. Possibly one could say the director serves the actor.
For the previous week, both at home and at work, he wore his wartime costume just to get the feel of it, and he polished his Dutch accent.
You just
Nej,
have a shot and guess what you think of the right clothes, and get some friend of some friend to do you a bit of Dutch gentleman talking English on a record, if possible. If possible, spouting a few of the lines that you've got so that you have some note of comparison, as it were.
These for children.
Just very simple ways about it, like that.
Yes, good.
Yeah, something in his mouth.
Sir Laurence would very much like to say bye-bye, little one, or good-night, little one, in Dutch.
Mapti. That's French. What should be? In English, we'd say...
Kleintje. Kleintje.
Kleintje.
Kleintje.
Kleintje.
Help the tips, maar precies. Mijn kleintje.
Ja, kleintje.
Kleintje. Doctor.
Good evening, Mrs. ter Horst. This is Colonel Viva. Your husband not yet returned.
Well, he should have been here by now.
I'm going to stop you. That, I think, Larry, your husband not returned, really is the problem that's facing you.
Yes. Didn't I get that over?
No. Oh, sir.
Well, then, of course, you can see we're in quite a strong position for holding out until 30 Corps reaches us, but we have to make certain arrangements. It's just for the slightly wounded. You know, we patch them up, send them back, that sort of thing.
I feel it may be a little more than that.
We waste time. Come.
No, clean check.
At the other end of the village from Kate ter Horst's house lay the Hartenstein Hotel, makeshift headquarters of the British 1st Airborne under General Urquhart. They were pinned down 8 miles from the bridge at Arnhem, the bridge they'd come to conquer. What had gone wrong?
I fell off the bike, you see.
They had landed too far from their objective, their radio communications had totally broken down, and they'd come up against crack German panzers, superior in arms and numbers.
Any number of things went wrong. But you expect things to go wrong in war. You'll never get 100% success. If you get partial success, it's not too bad. But if one started to discuss various things that did go wrong, well, you'll be here all day. In fact, next week, too.
Incredible. General Urquhart is somewhat sensitive about a film recording a succession of British reverses, and he didn't immediately fall in love with the script.
Well, I didn't care for it in some places at all, because I'm not being disrespectful in this manner, but it was obviously being written by an American. And we've got to accept the fact there's a great difference in the way we express ourselves in America and Britain. And it was too obviously, I mean, a lot of the scenes which affected British people only were phrased in terms and in Americanese. And I noticed in particular one conversation which I had with General Browning, which couldn't have been less real. And I can't imagine either of us using the words and expressions which are in the script.
The movie had to start at a certain time. If we had missed a spring start, we would have had to wait the entire next
William
year.
Goldman wrote the screenplay.
For example, the movie takes place in the 40s, and a lot of the characters are English, and I did not have time to research English slang of that period. Under other conditions, I might have done that. I didn't care about the accuracies, how can I put this? In the first draft of the screenplay, I knew that military experts were going to look at this, so that I knew the eventual film would be as accurate as it could possibly be. So I didn't care if I called an RAF man by the wrong rank title. It didn't bother me because I knew somebody was going to pick it up.
Sir Richard Attenborough, when he sent for the script, asked me to comment, and I did at some detail as far as certain aspects of the script were concerned, and he's, I think, incorporated most of the things that I've said in the final script.
General Urquhart, we have no more space or supply. And since a prisoner of war has a better chance than no chance at all, I have a mind to ask the Germans to take our wounded into their hospitals. If we can arrange evacuation, have I your permission to try?
Certainly, if Weaver agrees. But I hardly think the Germans will. Those are our guns out there. I don't think my permission is going to be a major problem.
The German commander who agreed to take the British wounded into German hospitals was SS Obersturmbannführer Walter Harzer, now a Stuttgart businessman.
And then we talk about the perimeter, because the fire on 1 or 2 hours each day must stop. And after the next day, it was possible to begin more than 2,000 of British wounded to take over of the other side for die Versorgung, for medical help.
I can remember shouting, "I'm not dead," and anyhow, I was taken over there, and a lady with red hair, I can always remember this vivid red hair, and she spoke perfect English, and "You're all right," and she gave me a sip of water, and a cigarette, which stuck to my lips, and pulled it away, never mind. I was taken from there up to Appledorn, where the nuns were doing most of the work, and then I was put into a long queue, kept moving up these corridors. It was like a killing shop, like a slaughterhouse. And they were like ghouls, these doctors. They were covered in blood. And they put my arms into something. And my father had taught me how to count in German when I was a little boy. He'd finished up his time on the Rhine after the first gaff. And he said to me, "Nummer, nummer." And I started to go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And he was dropping, it would be ether meth, which I wouldn't know in those days. He was dropping ether meth onto a gauze over my face, and then guillotine amputations off. But remember, gas gangrene had set in, and the stench. God, it doesn't matter which way I turned my nose, you know, I had it.
During this war, this particular battle, we found that the Germans fought with great chivalry. And I hope that that's depicted in this film. But,
Colonel John Frost.
Well, they were extremely meticulous about not shooting at our wounded. Our stretcher bearers were always given a clear run. and whether they had wounded with them or not. This was the last house which was unburnt and still standing, and we'd always been able to put the flames out, and then, of course, the water went. And so finally the flames got a real hold, and the doctor said, well, if you want, we can't do something about this. Our 200-odd wounded men are going to be burnt alive. And so they asked my permission and went out and arranged a quick truce with the Germans. Of course, the Germans were very close by all the time. And this they rapidly did, and the Germans came in themselves and took quite a lot of risks to get us out. In fact, the building collapsed as the last chap was brought out.
In all the feats of bravery in Operation Market Garden, 2 have gone into history. Julian Cook's crossing of the river at Nijmegen and Colonel Johnny Frost's heroic stand at the bridge at Arnhem. On the first day of Market Garden, his battalion fought their way through 8 miles of German territory in 7 hours to secure the north end of the bridge. They expected to have to hold it for 48 hours at most. In the event, they were under almost constant German attack for 4 sleepless days and nights.
When we got to this bridge, and of course it was a terrific job to be given, and one knew how important it was for the whole of, as I said, the whole of Western Europe, and we thought, well, thank God we've done our job, now it's up to everybody else. And we fully expected the rest of our division and the rest of the army to come roaring up before very long. And as it gradually dawned on us that neither of those things were going to happen, I think it was a sense of grave disappointment. I don't think rage, because we felt that if it was possible for them to come, they would have done.
Frost has come back to watch his ordeal be reenacted. To many people, a painful experience, but not to him.
Surprisingly, not really. I've always found in life that you forget the bad things and always remember the good things. And there's a wonderful sense of achievement and glory, if you like, here.
Also watching, several thousand Dutch from all over Holland. Turned into a film set, their bridge has become a sort of open-air theatre. Since they can't use it while the battle rages, the film company has provided them with a ferry to get across the river and a few bangs to while away a summer afternoon. For the older generation, it brings back memories of the worst of times, especially the sight of Nazi uniforms.
I've been in Holland very early after the war, and the opposition, to put it mildly, I had to face was quite painful for me, but I understood it, of course. Now it has changed. Don't forget, there's a very good relationship between Holland and my country now, and the people have seen so many other problems apart from the Second World War. Wars worldwide. Wherever you go, there's a war. Wherever you look at those wars, crimes have been committed. And the French and some other nations have found out lately that there was a resistance in Germany as well during the Nazi time, and that not every German was necessarily a Nazi. Just as much as not every Frenchman, for example, was a member of the resistance.
Was that where you were?
On the bridge, Richard Attenborough is briefing Anthony Hopkins, who's playing Colonel Frost, on the German attack.
Good. Tony, dear, may I make 2 suggestions? One, that hold your fire should be more of an instruction than a reprimand.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Frost in his time was something of an eccentric. His final instruction to his Batman on leaving for Arnhem was to load his shotgun, cartridges, golf clubs and dinner jacket into the staff car to follow. As usual, he took his hunting horn with him.
General Frost said something the other day. I had to do a scene where I had to run across the street under gunfire. I was running fairly fast, as I thought I would, to get under cover. And he did say to me, he said, you're running too fast. I said, I'm running too fast? He said, yes. He said, you wouldn't run that fast. He said, you'd have to show the Germans and your men a contempt for danger. I thought, I know what I would do. I would just run very fast.
I feel that he somehow seems to be growing a little bit more like me every day. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that.
In what way?
Well, I think he's like all the soldiers, our actors. I look at them now and I completely forget that they're actors. And to me, they seem to behave and look very much as our old soldiers did. And I think it's the same with the commanding officer. He seems to be more of a, you know, biting out his orders and that sort of thing better all the time.
Just across the road from Frost, Captain Eric Mackay and 50 Royal Engineers were desperately holding on.
It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. We'd beaten off 2 or 3 attacks during the night, and we were wondering what was going to happen. And suddenly, my position was in a school on the ramp to the east, as you were, to the north of the bridge, looking right down on the ramp. It was the only position actually on the ramp. And one of my lookouts said, there's a couple of armoured cars gone past the window, and I rushed over there, and sure enough, they went past the window. Now, we had no anti-tank weapons, so there's nothing you can do about armoured cars. The next thing came along was some half-tracks, which are open at the top, and we could look down on the drivers. Now, all my men were marksmen. So I said, what you've got to do is shoot the drivers, and then we'll shoot the rest of them as they get out. And obviously, the same thought had occurred to Colonel Frost's men on the other side of the bridge.
Fred, changed my mind. I think when you're faced with this vehicle, literally across, let us assume a moment's hesitancy from the driver. Let us assume that. And so that we get from you whatever the command would be in German, go on or go forward or on or whatever it is. I don't know. What does go forward mean or?
Weiter, weiter, weiter.
What does weiter mean?
Forward.
Yeah. Forward.
Yeah.
Yes. Would you be content using that word? Would you be content using that word, or do you think there's some other?
Weiter, weiter, weiter.
Yes, good. So, just make it twice, Fred, will you?
As these Henschel half-tracks arrived, we shot the leading people, and they stopped, and nothing happened for a minute.
Turn over! Turn over! 105, take 1, 8 camera.
Yes. Well, I'll give the command so that Robin can know you're going.
A little pause before they come in, Dickie.
You can go straight away, dear.
Right, bring them ahead. Come ahead, Jeffrey. Bring them ahead.
Action, go!
Here they are.
Okay.
Okay, he's going in now, Robin. Action, Tony.
Down, and there was a half-track had come down here, and I was looking face to face, about 6 feet into the commander's face. And he took out his Lu gun, shot at me, and the first bullet went through my helmet, the second hit my binoculars, and the third missed. He was killed, and all the crew underneath were killed.
that fire engine up the road. Take the fire engine up the road. Don't panic, just take it up there slowly, quietly. Is there anybody hurt up there? Nobody hurt, okay, fine.
Of the band of men Frost led to the bridge, 60 were killed and at least half the rest were badly wounded. But they didn't give in easily.
One of my soldiers came up to me and said that we're entirely surrounded by Germans. And I said, you're imagining. And he said, I went round and had a look. And on the grass outside the school were a whole lot of Germans, 60 or 70 of them, casually setting up mortars and machine guns and chatting about amongst themselves, obviously thinking we'd been all knocked out by the explosion. So I gave orders that everybody should man the windows, and we had 14 Sten guns and 6 Bren guns and a lot of grenades. And when I shouted out our war cry, Waho Muhammad, they would drop the grenades, and as soon as the grenades exploded, which is 4 seconds later, to open up with the Sten guns and the Bren guns. Now this killed them all, and you couldn't see the grass for dead Germans.
Of the 10,000 men who landed at Arnhem, only 2,000 came home. Most of the rest were taken prisoner, but a terrifying number gave their lives, and they remain there to this day in the peace of the cemetery at Oosterbeek. For them, it was a bridge too far. But for those that survive, the debate goes on.
I don't accept this criticism which some people level at the operation, that it was a complete flop and waste of lives. The fact remains they got over 2 major river lines as a result of our efforts. The 2 American divisions got over and got their objectives, and we didn't do so well on the top end.
Oh, no, because if this had succeeded, this was we would have had the port of Rotterdam, the V-2 weapons, if you remember, which were bombarding London at the time, would have been dealt with. The Ruhr could have been surrounded, and after that, it's very unlikely that the Germans could have continued the war. And there we are, with the war over, with the Russians still back in Russia, and Poland and Czechoslovakia and everything, part of the West.
Oh, it's terrible, really, losses, you see, because you always feel, now I wonder if I'd done something else, whether that those losses would have occurred. But you've got to face up to it, that you can't make war without losses, but you must try and minimize them. Now, after the war, I went into business. And the first, they asked me about, had I any experience of business? I'm still in business, funnily enough. And I said, well, I'm not sure I'm going to be much good to you, you said. And they said, why not? And I said, well, I would use always 1 ton of ammunition to save 1 life. If necessary, 10 tons. And therefore, my overheads would be too high.
When I went on this operation, I knew it was doomed to failure, as any experienced paratrooper would have. So we knew that we would either be killed or captured, that we wouldn't come back. It'd be a miracle if it was a success.
Well, not exactly a bridge too far, because it was takeable, to use that expression. I don't suppose there's anyone more devoted to peace and more against war than a general who's been through war. It's a terrible, terrible thing. When you see the devastation of the towns and the refugees and the dead bodies, you say, my God, this must never happen to my country. Never.
I like to think that I grew up at Arnhem because I saw, it opened my eyes at Arnhem that I didn't believe that one person could care so much for another person. And the comradeship that I saw at Arnhem was, I think, unique. It was fantastic to see people who were willing to give everything, the last drop of blood, their last drop of water, their last crumb of bread. There was this fantastic comradeship.
And naturally, I'd be a lie if I was to say that I wouldn't rather have my hands. Of course I'd rather have my hands. And many things that you can do, and if I see somebody fiddling with a fountain pen or something like that, I'm jealous. You know, it sets my teeth on edge. You see them twiddling their fingers, their watch chain or something like that, or winding a watch up, which I cannot do. The main thing that you've got to try and remember is that you've got to accept this. And I'm in a job today in war pensions. Now, I call it, I'm with the last of the Mohicans, or the sinking ship. I'm the manager of the war pensions office at Newcastle. And I see some, and have seen some dreadful cases from the First War, from the last war, from Lair, from Korea, and from Northern Ireland. You see, these are the things that, and it's going on to this day, this terrible, what was it that the great bard once said, Robbie, you know, man's inhumanity to man will cause countless thousands to mourn. It'll go on as long as there are people in the land. And to blame God.